Hello and welcome back to the Long Live Rock and Roll podcast. Jerry Lee Lewis revolutionised rock and roll. He made the piano a lead instrument, fused genres, delivered high-energy performances and defied social norms with his image. Having influenced future artists and genres to such an extent, we take a look at his iconic Great Balls of Fire and a handful of his other hits which undoubtedly helped shape, innovate and pioneer the rebellious spirit of rock and roll. Joining me to discuss Jerry Lee Lewis is my co-host, Mr. Felipe Amorim. How you doing, bro?
Doing great, man. I hope you're doing fine too.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Welcome back, everyone. For new listeners or viewers, please, the terms and conditions, as we like to call them. If you're on YouTube, make sure you give us a like and a subscribe so you stay up to date with our content. And if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, whether you're new or an old listener, I don't mean age, I mean in terms of how long you've been listening to us, make sure you scroll down and give us a little review. Anything, 20 seconds of your time really helps us out. A good review sends us straight up the charts and gets to us to be seen by more people. So we'd really appreciate it. Anyway, Jerry Lee Lewis.
Yes.
You watched the biopic, didn't you? Oh, it's not a biopic. It's actually a movie, isn't it?
It's a movie. It's a Hollywood movie, proper one, like Great Balls of Fire. I think it wasn't like a hit when it was released, but it's a well-done movie. Dennis Quaid plays Jerry Lee Lewis, and he does a phenomenal job. Jerry Lee Lewis didn't like the movie, but liked him.
That's always a good sign, I think.
Yeah, exactly. And
so even if the movie was directed badly, you got me right.
Yeah, exactly. Of course, he wouldn't like the movie. It doesn't show him as a nice person, right? Yeah. So the other thing is. He re-recorded the tracks for the movie, so it's like so all his hits you can find the original versions on Spotify and or whatever platform you're using, but you can also find the 1989 re-recordings by Jerry Lee Lewis himself, and they're really good actually.
And we'll just touch on that for a second, because if you, whether you're on YouTube, Spotify or Apple, if you go down into the show notes, you'll see an episode playlist, which we create each week for a new episode. And it has all the songs we mention. You know, this is an artist episode, but if we do an album, it'll have all the songs from an album plus any we mention. Now, because we're doing a kind of overview of Jerry Lee Lewis, a little look and dive into his career, we've actually put in the soundtrack for the movie because it contains most of his hits. Now, although these are re-recorded, you're going to see the soundtrack for the movie, all the songs he wrote, all of his hits that were re-recorded for the movie, and on top of that I've put the originals below. So all the songs we're going to talk about, the characteristics, the stylistic, genres are in it. That'll all be in the playlist for you to listen to along with this podcast. So just kick off with a little bit of background about Jerry Lee Lewis. He was born late September in 1935 in Faraday, Louisiana, and died at a decent age of 87 at the end of October 2022. I actually remember when he died and the news came out. A couple of years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah.
He began playing piano at a very young age, which is quite funny, isn't it? Because that's what we've always seen with these rock and roll pioneers. Fats Domino, Elvis, Buddy. Oh God, I've forgotten. Oh my God, Chuck Berry. How did I forget that? Chuck Berry with a guitar at a young age. Yeah. It shows that their influence comes early, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And especially, Jerry Lee Lewis, he was influenced through the radio. His family enjoyed music, and he went to quite a lot of local music venues. His first public performance was in 1949, and he's actually got a couple of famous family members, maybe not for the right reasons, especially this TV evangelist. Jimmy Swaggart is, I believe it's an uncle of his, who was a TV evangelist, and Mickey Gilley was a country singer.
All right.
So he's got a bit of a musical family, a bit of a famous family.
Yeah, exactly.
But this is a really funny story that before we move on to his career, I want to tell you this. Did you know that his mother enrolled him into a Bible institute in Texas?
I would imagine, so I didn't know it was exactly that.
He was enrolled in a Bible institute, but they kicked him out because when they were doing the songs, they did the song My God Is Real, and he did a boogie-woogie version of it. And they kicked him out. They're like, there ain't no place for this boogie-woogie in this institute. Sorry for that poor Texan accent.
If you watch the movie, there's a lot of his kind of conflicts with his cousin, because they were like, at least in the movie, they're portrayed as almost like brothers. They grew up together, and his cousin was going down the path of the church and all this stuff, and he was playing rock and roll, and his cousin was always telling him that's the devil's music. You shouldn't play that. You shouldn't be doing this.
There you go.
And yeah.
Well, just three more dates. 1952, we got the first ever Jerry Lee Lewis demo. 1956, he went to Nashville to audition for Sun Studios, where we know, that's where Elvis was essentially born. And 1957, we got Great Balls of Fire. So I think because of the nature of this episode, that's where we're going to have to start. Let's talk about Great Balls of Fire, man. You kick off.
What a song, right? That song has got every single essential characteristics of his playing and his singing. Yeah. So that is Jerry Lee Lewis in a nutshell. He recorded songs by loads of different songwriters, and he re-recorded songs that were already classics. But that's his own classic. That's his number one hit. That is the song that knocked Elvis to second place, down to second place on the charts. So that's a hell of an achievement, isn't it? It
is, yeah. I mean, the thing that stands out to me, and I think to most people straight away, is the piano and the use of a piano in this song.
Yeah.
Because it was so different for the time. The piano was a background instrument in the 50s, where the vocals were the primary. I mean, I suppose the vocals still are the primary thing here, but rock and roll was very guitar driven.
Yeah.
Wasn't it, in the early 50s? They're just learning to use the electric guitar and just sort of really being a bit rebellious with this electric guitar twangy sound coming through an amp. For Jerry Lee Lewis to just sort of out of nowhere say, well, actually, I don't play the guitar, I play the piano, and here's what I'm going to give you.
Yeah, exactly. And also, also, apparently the labels were looking for more guitar players or people who could sing and play guitar. So you had Elvis playing the acoustic guitar, you had Chuck Berry playing those amazing solos with an electric guitar, and then Jerry Lee Lewis comes with his piano, but playing almost like he's like a Eddie Van Halen of the piano, isn't it? It's the thing with his piano playing is it's not how can I put it? It's not clean, it's not nice, it's not like it's chaotic, it's wild, and it's completely over the top,
aggressive,
but it works.
Yeah. I mean, it was a completely innovative approach to it, wasn't it? Driving the piano was the driving force of the song. Although you had the kind of rhythm section in the bass and occasionally some drums in his other work, the piano was the driving factor, creating a really energetic sound.
Yeah, I would say, although the solos are amazing and everything, but his left hand, the bass lines it does on the piano, is so strong and and so important to the groove in the song.
Yeah,
and it's really cool. Yeah.
I love for the version. I mean, there's many versions of this song, and the one I've listened to that is in the playlist, not the one from the soundtrack, but the other one. The solo at the end, I call it a solo. It's just one note.
It's just hammering that one note, isn't it? Yeah.
And it just goes on, but I don't want it to stop. I don't want it to stop. I'm like, please give me more of that. But yeah, complementing that incredibly innovative and aggressive piano, we have his vocals, which kind of almost do the same thing, don't they? It's very wild, it's quite breathy, it's very intense, and it matches the passion that you hear A in the lyrics and B in the piano.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's a nice conversation between his vocals and the piano, isn't it? If you listen to another two of his songs, I think it's I'm on Fire and Breathless, they use the same formula as Great Balls of Fire. It's the same sort of like up-tempo rock groove, and with stops before the main line of the chorus and that kind of stuff. But he was really, really good at using that formula and creating on top of that. And but the vocals are essential. So he wouldn't be that famous if it was just for his piano playing. I think his vocals are quite recognizable as well, isn't it? So he was clearly also not trying to sound like anyone else. That's the other thing.
And he just has this freedom with it, doesn't he? Where, I've got in my notes here, funny voices, but I'm talking about those moments where he's like, kiss me, baby, it feels good. Just playing around. He's having fun. And this is what rock and roll was about, wasn't it? It was about energy. Yeah. It was about changing the norms, not doing something that was so normal before. When you think about pop music in the 40s and 50s, you think of sort of show music, musical theatre, show music that was on Broadway, and you have a very, again, I'm generalising here, but you'd have a very conservative singer, probably singing very conservative lyrics as well, in a very normal, and I don't want to go as far as saying like operatic way, but it would be very controlled, nice notes, nice melodies. But then you got Jerry Lee Lewis coming here. We mentioned it in the Elvis episode with some of his vocal ways, like, I want to see you like that. This is a bit different because Elvis was it was more of a rhythmic thing. This is just a guy going off on one and doing whatever he wants, whatever he thinks the song needs. And it's brilliant.
It sounds like he would go into a recording session and play as if he's playing in his living room. Yeah. So it's just like, I just want to, mess about with the lyrics and the melody. And he laughs sometimes in the middle of the melody.
Yep.
There's a version, I think it's his first recording of a Big Leg Woman. I don't want to get any of the song titles wrong, but it's in the movie. It's a famous song, but it's his original recording for Sun Records was he's just like clearly interacting with his own piano. It's like having fun with himself, like plays a phrase on the piano and kind of does the same with the vocals, and is almost like laughing as he sings the lyrics. He's not taking himself very seriously there, and it's super fun to listen to.
Through all these songs, there's shouting, there's laughing, there's growling. Like, he just does it all. He's just having fun, and I think that's what's really important and probably quite innovative, because although like I said, we heard those vocal things, Elvis did it, Little Richard as well changed his voice depending on what the song needed. There was still an element of, I'm going to say, seriousness there. It feels like, although they were messing about a bit in terms of vocal flexions and this and that, they still had to deliver the melody. And that's because probably they were recording songs for their labels and for studios. And obviously Jerry Lee Lewis might have been doing the same. But I just love that. I'd love to think that they're in the studio and whoever the producer is just goes, Jerry, do what the hell you want, man, because we know what you're good at, and if you record it and execute it well, it's going to sell. And it did.
Exactly. It did multiple times.
Yeah, exactly. As I said, this is a very my notes, I got departure from more polished and restrained pop performances of the era, which, as I was saying, the move from the 40s and early 50s pop into this rebellious and crazy rock and roll brings us to where we are with his vocals. Now, the other thing we talk about, especially in this song, is the lyrics, because this again was a very innovative and unusual lyrical style, very sexual, very rebellious. This is not what parents of the 50s wanted their teenage kids listening to, especially back then in such a conservative time.
It does remind me of Little Richard in that sense, isn't it? The lyrics.
Although I feel that this is a bit more explicit than Little Richard to a degree.
Oh, yeah, definitely,
Yeah. As I said, controversial at the time. But the explicitness, we have to look back at this as as one of the moments that revolutionized early rock and roll.
Yeah.
Because this is what rock, for those who don't know, this is what rock and roll means. Rock and roll literally means sex. Rocking and rolling in a bed, on a sofa, whatever. Yeah. That's where the literal
and
definition of the term
comes. He wasn't trying to avoid this, talking about this sort of stuff. And also the fact he would call himself the wild one, he's wild. He wanted to be the king of rock and roll. He wanted to be bigger than Elvis, and his performance is all about that. It's funny because when we think about any music from that time, you tend to think of the way you look at the way people dressed at the time. You would imagine a certain behavior, attached to that image, and it doesn't happen with him. I think he was almost like a Jimi Hendrix on stage, although he never set fire on the piano like happens in a movie. And I don't think it's even possible to set fire on the piano and keep playing. But he was kind of like really close to that sort of Jimi Hendrix attitude on stage. Yeah. But you would imagine we see those things with guitarists, right, all the time, like breaking guitars or jumping and doing all the stuff. You would imagine there's someone who's sitting in front of his piano is like you're restricted to that. Like the piano is almost like an obstacle between you and your audience, and he performs.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, it's not like a guitar. You can walk around on stage with it, and he could perform with his piano as if he was a heavy metal guitar player.
Well, that's a great point, and I would go as far as to say that probably Jerry Lee Lewis is one of the reasons that we saw the Who smashing up their guitars on stage. Keith Moon kicking his kit. This is because it's rock and roll. Yeah. And although the Who were we're thinking about it, the Who were only sort of 10 or 15 years after this. you can see exactly where they got this out. They must have looked at Jerry Lee Lewis and gone, my God, this guy thinks he can do what he wants. And he can, and he can.
Exactly.
So we're going to do it as well. This is what we're going to bring to our music. We're going to take that bass of the blues, and we're going to add distorted guitars, add a bit of raucousness, add some shouting, and transform it into like rock and roll.
Yeah, I think a proper like rock and roll performer would always get some sort of reaction from the audience, and it might be because the music is amazing, but sometimes it's just because it's shocking in a certain way. And to quote Spinal Tap again, rock and roll should change your life, not necessarily for the better. So we're not saying that if you listen to Jerry Lee Lewis and if you read about him, you're gonna feel any better. On the contrary.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's that's rock and roll. Rock and roll is not always cool, is not always good, isn't it?
I feel bad for forgetting the quote, but is it the same movie where does he say
it's the
rock
reunion,
and roll
the Spinal Tap reunion? He says like good rock and roll should hurt.
Yeah.
Should change your life, not necessarily
not for the better. Yeah, that's it. Excellent.
Jerry Lee Lewis, the last couple of days listening to his music, he's changed my life, but not quite sure it's for the better. No.
And the final point about Great Balls of Fire, which is a fantastic song, it's just the short, punchy structure, which became like a symbol and a hallmark for him and his kind of music. It's like it was so fast, it was so intense that it's like 2 minutes, just get it done.
Yeah, and the first line is just vocals, isn't it? And then on the piano and the band responds to the vocals, like a call and response with vocals and the band.
Yeah.
And it's really intense. Yeah, really short. The 1989 version of it is longer with a guitar solo, but I prefer the original, which is really punchy and short. And
I think you've just got to think that it definitely ensured its suitability for 50s radio. Because you think even nowadays, what we're saying, you can't really have a song longer than 4 minutes that will get radio play. Yeah. Because people's attention spans just aren't up. Yeah. Then they're not up for it. But to think about it back then, radio was probably quite a limited amount of time you had to either listen to the radio or to sort of go through songs and hear your favourites. And just thinking that a 1 minute 50-second song, which a lot of his were, just gets it done. Probably suits a teenage audience, which was what he was going for.
Exactly, and it's perfect for the dance floor. It's perfect for a live gig. It's perfect for radio. It's a song that works in pretty much any situation. Also, you could be that's an interesting thing. If you go to like a local gig and there's a pop show, the band could play that song. If it's a classic rock show, they could play that song. If it's a country show, they could play that song. And if it's a blues show, they can play that song.
That's a great
That song would be in any sort of live music scenario and would get everyone up and dancing.
Fantastic point, yeah. And I think the fact that we don't really dwell on anything too long, it's not too long of the vocals and it's not too long of a piano solo. It just keeps, like you said, keeps the audience and the listeners entertained and engaged.
Yeah.
That's what we've got to say about Great Balls of Fire. Let's sort of expand a bit more and talk about some of the other songs. So, as I said to listeners and viewers, the songs are in the playlist. We got songs like High School Confidential, I'm on Fire, Whole Lot of Shaking, Breathless, Crazy Arms, Wild One, Lucky Old Sun, Chantilly Lace, You Win Again, Mean Woman Blues. These are the kind of songs that we've looked at and identified as sort of being his hits and his most famous songs. And we just sort of had a little listen to them and sort of took a look at what was very innovative, pioneering, and what the general characteristics were. One thing that I want to talk about first, and you mentioned it, was the country music. Because he made a transition to country music in the 60s. And I think what's funny is the way he approached it. He took the aspects of what was best about his music and he kind of intertwined it into a country sounding thing, didn't he? And it made it relevant. He made rock and roll and his transition into country, he made it seamless. He didn't just go from a rock and roll artist to a country artist. He took what worked about his style and he moved it over with him to the country.
Yeah, exactly. And he had a country music influence. He recorded Crazy Arms, isn't it? Which is a country song. I think the original, I don't know who The original one is by Kenny Brown, I guess. No, he listened to Kenny Brown, but I don't know if that's the original one. But I've listened to Ray Price version, which was the first time I've listened to that song, and it's told like it's proper country with the fiddle and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So if you listen to Ray Price's version of Crazy Arms, and it's like, okay, that's country, and then you listen to Jerry Lee Lewis, like he turned into something else, but the energy is there, and his musical identity is there in a way that he made the song his own song, which is
that's absolutely right, and he transferred that rebellious energy into country, which was an innovation in and of itself.
Yeah.
Because, you know, country music was quite run of the mill. You know, like I said, we've got that 40s and 50s pop music. You got your jazz, you got your rhythm and blues, and country was always a staple in America. So yeah, I mean, if you want to hear some of his country stuff, check out songs like "What Made Milwaukee Famous." She Even Woke Me Up to Say Goodbye. There was one other one that I put in the playlist. You Win Again was very country, and that's literally from an album called A Taste of Country. So there you go. That was interesting. But in terms of the cross genre stuff as well, because he made the very clear move over to country in the 60s.
Yeah.
But even in his early music, we got a little blend of genres, didn't we? And this is what we said. This is what when I was doing my research and doing the notes, I would just found myself thinking, oh, I wrote this exact same thing for Fats Domino, or I wrote this exact same thing for Elvis. And this is the reason why these guys are the pioneers of rock and roll, because they dared to be different. They dared to cross genres. And just like Elvis and Little Richard and Chuck Berry and Bo Diddley and Fats Domino, we get a mixture of these genres. We get boogie woogie, we get gospel, we get blues, we get R&B. You know,
those guys grew up listening to all of that. I think in the end, for them, that's just music.
There's no, they don't see it differently. Do they?
I don't think there's a lot of planning into this. I need to make this more boogie woogie. Or, like I need to make this more country. I think they were like, okay, I grew up listening to that kind of stuff. I'm going to play it in my own way. And I think
and I think good songs, you know, Great Balls of Fire is one of them, because you got that boogie woogie piano, the blues harmonic progression, a whole lot of shaking going on is another good one.
Whole Lot of Shaking is one of my personal favorite songs to play live. You know,
you play? You must, of course, you play it with your band. Of
play that in some of the blues gigs and stuff, because people learn the chorus on the go. If they've never heard that song, like Shake Baby Shake, it's just that you can anyone can sing that. Anyone can learn the lyrics on the spot. And you get people repeating that chorus for as long as you want, and it's super fun to see an audience interacting with the song. Some of them might not be familiar with the song. I mean, it's famous enough for most people to know it, but it's a phenomenal. His version of it is a phenomenal take on the song, and it's just it's one of those, like it's kind of a dance music in a way, isn't it?
Oh, for the time, for sure, But what this genre blending did is it just made rock and roll more inclusive. It basically, in terms of audiences who liked gospel, could come and listen to it. Maybe not Jerry Lee Lewis. Maybe that's a bit extreme of the rock and roll. But you know, they'd listen to Fats Domino, wouldn't they? And it appealed to fans of other music genres as well. And you know, especially a key cornerstone of rock and roll music was the bringing together of black and white music. And again, if you've heard this before, it's because we've said it before with Elvis, with Fats Domino. It was such a significant genre. It was so important, rock and roll, and just to see another example of one of the pioneers. But let's do something else he did. He was very innovative for, and something that actually I don't think we can say the same for Elvis, Fats, or any of the others. Or not to this extent anyway. His high energy performances. Go on, talk to us about that, his stage presence and everything.
Well, you have a nice picture just behind you.
Well, actually, no, I don't. Look, I'm going to turn my video off because he's on the piano. Oops.
Yeah, exactly.
Hold on. Let me do it like this.
Yeah,
look, he's on the piano.
Yeah, exactly. But that's what I'm saying. Like, I've got a picture of him on my background here, like playing with his left foot on the piano. So he would play with his feet. He would sit on the piano, and he would literally play with his ass, and play. And it's just again, it's over the top, but it makes you laugh. The energy is like, it's almost, for me, it sounds to me like he was angry and happy at the same time. It's that kind of performance. It feels like he wants to break everything on stage.
I feel like he was happy that he was on stage, but he was probably getting his anger out
Yeah,
That's what he was
exactly.
doing. But yeah, this raw, rebellious stage presence really did set a standard for
Yeah,
showmanship that we'd never seen before. Influencing Elvis, to do his little dancing, and I mean, as we said, think of numerous. There's too many to list of artists who are smashing their instruments, who are doing
yeah,
crazy stuff. Hendrix playing behind the thing. I don't
yeah,
think Hendrix would do that if he didn't see Jerry Lee Lewis playing the piano with his feet.
exactly. Yeah.
Do you think the piano?
Mhm.
Maybe actually, I was gonna ask. Do you think the piano limited Jerry Lee Lewis? But actually, the answer is it's probably good because if he did have
Yeah,
a
good.
guitar, it would be
God knows
crazier.
what that man would do without the piano as a
Being
shield.
established on the
The
floor.
piano is
Yeah.
like a shield for the audience, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
he was wild. But I think yeah, it's interesting though. Like if it wasn't for the piano, because like he would like just as in the picture you have there, he would like stand on top of the piano and sing and walk around. But eventually, he had to go back to his stool and actually
yeah.
play.
Yeah.
So that kind of stuff, I think it's an interesting limitation and made the performance quite unique. When you think about if you compare him to Fats Domino, it's the opposite in a way. Fats Domino is like the that good man that you want him to be around you. You want him to come to your family dinner and play the piano in the living room. He's super cool, relaxed, and he was always there with a smile on his face.
Mm,
Whilst Jerry Lee Lewis is like an angry version of the same sort of music in a way.
yeah.
I want to mention one of his songs or
Of
one of
course.
the songs he recorded, which shows a complete different side of his personality or of his
Yep.
musical personality. Is the song "That Lucky Old Sun," which is a
Yes.
ballad, really beautiful ballad,
Yep.
and it has been recorded by some of the biggest names in the music industry. So Ray Charles, Sam Cooke, Tom Jones, Louis Armstrong, Johnny Cash. So everyone, Johnny Cash was later on, I guess, but everyone has recorded that song. But his version of it, and actually, for some reason, I prefer the 1989, the movie soundtrack version of it.
Okay.
Maybe because the recording is better, I don't know. But his take on that song is it's completely different because all those big names they recorded with a full band orchestra, big production for the standards of the time.
Yeah.
And Jerry Lee Lewis plays this song on his own, and it's just him and the piano. And what he does with the piano, it's beyond beautiful. It's his amazing piano skills are there.
Yeah.
It's not about the technique. It's about the expression
The
and
feeling.
yeah, the
Yeah.
feeling. And it makes that song makes you sad, but makes you want to listen to it again and again. So I've
Mm.
listened to that song 4 times today.
Wow.
So to give an idea,
Must love
yeah.
it.
So I
Yeah.
totally if you don't know this song, you can listen to the other ones. You can compare to all the other guys. Because the problem with those artists at the time is they all recorded the same songs. A
Yeah.
lot of those
Exactly.
guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's really hard to stand out with something that's not your own music. Like Great Balls of Fire, that's his song. Now, That Lucky Old Sun, it's not his song, and some really, really big names have recorded it, but I think he did better.
Mm. No, it's yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. It's a fantastic take on it. Um, well, yeah. I mean, I suppose that's it for his innovations and pioneering in the world of music. We were talking about his performance. Yeah, I was just going to say that I feel like when you, in terms of like word association,
Mm.
you think rock star, okay? No, not Jerry
Yeah,
Lee Lewis. I'm just saying the
yeah,
words
rock
rock
star.
star. The next words to come, I think, are rock and roll.
Yeah.
And I think people, I was going to say people like Jerry Lee Lewis. I'm gonna be a bit dramatic here. I think Jerry Lee Lewis might be the reason that you look at something and say that's rock and roll. Because
Mm.
for all Elvis did, his dancing and the crazy stuff, it wasn't rock star attitude, was it? In the early days.
Yeah.
For all
You
Fats
talk,
Domino did, it wasn't a rock star attitude. For all Little Richard did, although he performed well and he had this kind of mysterious, excuse me, and he had this sort of mysterious aura about him, none of them, at least to the level of Jerry Lee Lewis, exude that I'm untouchable, I'm a rock star attitude. Would you
I
agree?
think it was, yeah, because I think he can be compared to in terms of his stage persona and all that stuff as compared to Axl Rose, for
Yeah,
instance.
yeah.
It's that same level of rock and roll attitude, and I mean the bad side of it.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
in 1950s or late 1950s and 60s, So it's actually it's not. When was his first album
So
released?
his first EP was in
Yeah,
52.
yeah. So early 50s
Yeah.
actually. Yeah.
But then it was
So he
about
had
it was the
yeah.
later 50s where he started recording at studios and stuff.
So yeah, so the kind of like rock and roll or rock star image that you see in bands in the 80s, the hard rock and glam rock bands in the 80s. He had
Yeah.
that back in the day. I'm by no means I'm saying this is a good thing, because I think I'm still more interested in the music than anything else. Like I still I love music for the sort of emotions that the melodies and the lyrics bring to me. I don't care about that much about personalities and lifestyles and all that stuff. But his stage attitude was a bit too much, and that actually defined what rock and roll or what being a rock star is, I guess. Because I think he was trying too hard to be the king of rock and roll.
You do?
I think he was. Wait, I think he wanted to be bigger than Elvis and bigger than everyone else. I might be wrong about it. It's just
Well, let's talk now about why he wasn't. And this is a sort of a difficult segment to touch because there's some distressing themes here. But the controversy and decline of Jerry Lee Lewis's career. Now, there's a myriad of things that we have to address. First of all, he had very bad habits of drug and alcohol abuse. I mean, he had 7 wives and 6 children with, various of those 7 wives. And within those wives, there were accusations of violence from previous marriages. On top of his bad habits of drug and alcohol abuse, you also had him spending copious amounts of money that he'd earned fairly, but on habits and a lifestyle that wasn't sustainable. So, and again, this might be another little tick in the rock star box.
yeah.
Spending money, getting married to multiple women, being, I'm not accusing all rock stars of being violent, but you know what I mean? It's the kind of an association that a rock star is wild. And I don't want to say every rock star is a domestic abuser, but in this case,
I think is the idea that fame and money allows you to do whatever you think whatever comes to your mind.
Yeah.
So I think when people have a lot of money, a lot of fame, they have access to certain things that most people don't have. Also, they have people telling them all day how great they are. They start to believe in that, and they start behaving away. I think if you have too much money, you will show. You're probably going to show to the world who you really are, and that's the thing. And good people with a lot of money can do a lot of good things, and bad people with a lot of money can do a lot of bad things.
So, but the effectively the day that because I think you can actually tie it to one specific week,
one event
where Jerry Lee Lewis's career began to decline came in 1958, where it was revealed that he married his 13-year-old cousin, Myra Brown. Jerry Lee Lewis was 22 at the time. And in her words, I just want to get it right. In her words, it was not seen as unusual in the Southern culture they came from. But to the rest of the world, it was an outrage. It doesn't make it
right.
Not at all. But to the rest of the world, I mean, it was literally an international scandal. You did a bit of research into what happened in Britain.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. So basically, it was, I don't remember the name of the journalist, it was a UK journalist who actually published this to the world, because it might have been the case that people didn't look into it in America or didn't care about it or whatever. I don't know the reason for it, but it was when he was touring the UK that the media put it out. And basically saying, this is what rock and roll is, this kind of bad attitude. He's a bad man. Look at what he's doing. And she's just a baby. They put all that kind of stuff. They really wanted to shock, because it is shocking. So the thing is, like, basically he didn't, I don't think he could find a way out of this, because it's like, he married her, and I think she was with him in England. She was with him when the media figured everything out, and I think they lied about her age as well. So he tried to get away, saying she was a couple of years older, whatever. Right. And so his official statements about her age were not real. So that's the other thing. So it was
Yeah.
lying, just like lying about it
So
as well.
the
So
problems
basically
were,
trying to, but oh, you know, it's not that bad. It's not that bad. So just trying to justify something that's not acceptable.
and whether or not something is acceptable in your own culture does not make it okay to the rest of the world.
Well, it doesn't
And
mean that people are going to see it as a good thing,
exactly.
you know. Yeah.
And literally, you got your three things. You got the lying. She was 13, and a cousin as well. So those three things all came together, and literally overnight, it came during his promotional tour in England. He was blacklisted from radio stations. The tour was cancelled after 3 shows. His sales in the UK, and actually quite interestingly in the US, plummeted. Radio stations refused to play his songs, and this once promising career that had only been going for a couple of years just plummeted.
Yeah. Was that the first cancellation in history of pop culture? Probably not.
You were saying about this before we started recording. Do you have evidence? Did you read?
No. I'm just asking. No, it's like
right.
Because the level of how can I put it? The amount of stuff that happened to him as a consequence of his bad actions and bad choices, it's
probably
I don't
quite
know if
unique
it was
for the time.
Yeah, for the time, I don't think anyone suffered that kind of consequences for.
So was 1958 the first occurrence of cancel culture?
Well, could have been. So
there you go.
Is that the beginning of cancel culture? That's the thing, you know. Jerry Lee is a pioneer in many ways for the.
We didn't consider that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I say unfortunately, you know, it's hard because you look at him and what he's done for music, and you say, well, you know, it's a shame that he didn't go on and do more with music, because who knows what he would have done. But at the same time, you kind of look at the situation and you say, well, it's not really on. I
think you can separate the artist from or not the artist. I say the music from the artist in a certain way. But I think there's limits to it. I think most people don't care that much about what someone does in their private life, and as long as the performance is good. But when your actions affect the life of someone else who is innocent or you know, can't protect themselves or whatever, vulnerable, so that's any vulnerable, when your bad choices affect any vulnerable person, I think that's when people cross the line, I would say. And maybe that's where the audience says, you know what, I don't want to go to your gig, I don't want to give you my money, which is understandable. But in a way, it was probably a lesson for the industry of music as well, for musicians and everyone else.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point. I mean, I suppose when you look at it now, that's actually a very good point, because when you look at it now, look at the latest outrage that's happened in rock and roll. Dave Grohl has cheated on his wife, and he's got another woman pregnant, and he's come out and admitted it, and he said, I've made a mistake, but I'm going to be there for the child, I'm going to support the child, and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And he has been cancelled to holy hell. Like, people don't want to hear Dave Grohl anymore because he's done this horrible action. I found that one particularly funny, because I was just saying it's interesting. It's interesting how, you know, between 58 and 2024, 58, that's the worst thing you could do. Marry your 13-year-old cousin, have kids, and she, you know, whatever. 2024, the worst thing you can do is cheat on your wife. So I kind of like that our standards have gotten better as the years have gone on. But at the same time,
in the sense that we try not to accept some bad behavior.
Yes,
I found funny the interesting that you bring the Dave Grohl story, because I found quite funny that normally he doesn't talk that much about his personal life, isn't it?
Yeah.
And he came out to say, you know, he gave the news himself, and I found funny that in a certain way I was just like, Dave, sorry, I don't want to hear about your private life.
Well, I think what happened. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, because it's not like you got arrested because you beating someone up or whatever. It's something bad that you didn't affect you and your family, and I don't want to know. So it's like, but
I just have a feeling, and I said this to my wife because we're both big Foo Fighters fans. I have a feeling that something might have come out if he didn't. I don't want to say that the lady who he gave a child to was gonna threat. Oh, you know, Dave, if you don't support me, I'm going to come out and tell the media.
Or maybe he preferred to say it before everyone else starts talking about it.
I think he just wanted to get ahead of it. You know, Foo Fighters are one of the biggest bands in the world. I'm sure their PR team, They pay him a lot. Probably just wanted to get ahead of it. But I agree with you.
No,
It's interesting. Yeah.
It's interesting. Now, one thing, I think it's the first time we're touching the celebrity gossip kind of
Okay.
kind of show, isn't it? Wow.
On the Jerry Lee Lewis episode. How odd.
maybe we're gonna change the style completely from now on. But I just want to say, no, it's interesting. Like how when you watch a movie, right, and there's a, let's say, you know what, one of my favorite movies, The Godfather, right? It's clear to me that although they want you to kind of fall in love with the characters, they're not trying by any means to say that those people are good. So
I think the best films do that.
Yeah, and
when you think, sorry, just related to that, my favorite TV show is The Sopranos.
Right, which is based on that kind of...
Well, it's gangster stuff, and the whole point of The Sopranos is that Tony Soprano is stuck, always throughout the whole series, he's stuck between decisions that's going to affect his family, his gang, and none of the decisions he ever makes are morally right.
Yeah.
But the other decision the other choice he had would have been even worse.
Yeah. So yeah, exactly. And I would say, like with most of the rock stars, they probably, most of them had opportunities to do much better things in their lives. But what I believe is, like, when you see those people acting and living like that, you can still admire their music, first of all, because that's something else. It's like if someone is an exceptional, like, footballer, but they, horrible people, you can't say they're not good in football. So
their job,
like, it's an objective fact that Jerry Lee Lewis is a phenomenal musician. That's measurable in many ways, right? Now, but the thing for me is, like, when you see, everything that comes out in the press about rock stars, about, or the how controversial they are and this and that, that means I think it's interesting to see how people behave when they have that sort of power or that sort of money, and it's there's lots of lessons to learn from that. And I don't think following the stories and trying to understand what happened means that we turning those guys into heroes, right? I think they are at the same time heroes and villains in their own stories.
And you have to remember, Dave Grohl is not the first person to ever cheat on his wife. He is only human, So I think, I came away with it, and myself and Dash, we just kind of like, well, listen, it sucks, because we look up to him. He's a bit of a rock icon, a bit of a rock god. He's fucked up a bit here.
Yeah, but we're not going to look at Foo
Fighters any differently.
Yeah, does it treat his audience badly, or does it do it like, does it commit crimes and stuff like that? So that's the point. For me, the whole thing is like, I can go to a gig and enjoy a performance as long as the artist is not behaving like a dickhead to the audience, right?
Yeah.
And I don't want to know what those guys, as long as they're not criminals, I don't want to know what those guys are doing behind the scenes. And for me, the problem with Jerry Lee Lewis, I would say, is that he crossed that line. And for is it a crime? In many ways it is a crime. Yeah. So that's the line. But I would say, like, in general, like the Dave Grohl story, I didn't even bother reading about it. It's like I like his music. I don't want to know his opinions. I don't want to know about his life. Jerry Lee Lewis, though, he was so out there. He was so, like, outrageous that I think he couldn't hide his most evil side.
Well, yeah, let's leave the controversy and the decline and the bad stuff behind, and let's just touch on his legacy before we finish. So we've pretty much said it throughout the whole episode, but when you think Jerry Lee Lewis, you think of the iconic rebellious performances that really defined early rock and roll, that gave rock and roll that rebellious tag, that had the sexual lyrics, that kind of towed the line of, oh, is this acceptable, is it not? His messages, his musical messages, resonated with the youth culture of the time, and really, really just set a standard and set the tone for rock music that followed. Because when you think only 10 years later, you've got Led Zeppelin 1 coming out. Yeah. You've got The Who, and you think, God, when you think that, to me is crazy, because one thing that I've always struggled with, is I look at all the Beatles did in 8 years. Yeah. And I think, God, like, some of my favourite movie, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, came out in 1975. The Beatles had been disbanded for 5 years.
Wow.
And I just think, how can they have not existed at the same time? And it's kind of like this. It's baffled me just now doing that quick maths that Zeppelin only came 10 or so years after Jerry Lee Lewis.
Yeah, do
It's
you know what
crazy
makes
when I think
and do you know
about
what
it.
makes me what makes me sad about music mostly. I'm going to sound like an old man now.
In
Who
my
I am,
day.
I am an old man anyway. But what I'm saying is like I have a feeling that music now is so predictable in many ways. You know, it's like you listen to stuff and say, oh, that sounds like that, sounds like someone else.
Oh, I guess we're
And
getting a
I
key
think
change in the next chorus.
yeah, exactly. And from the recordings to the stage performances, what people have achieved in the 50s, 60s, and 70s is still like
Mind blowing, I
yeah,
think.
it sounds to me like hundreds of years of music history in those
Yeah.
3 decades.
I wonder what in 50 years they'll be saying about the 2020s. And I'm serious, like I wonder if something
Yeah,
innovative has, maybe an album was released this week from an artist we don't know about, from a genre we don't listen to, and maybe
yeah,
something was really innovative about it, but we won't
yeah,
know until maybe 30 years from now, where they look back and go,
exactly.
that was the moment that this happened. But yeah, anyway, with Jerry Lee Lewis, the same thing, the influence on the artists, just from his attitude, you can tell he influenced punk musicians, rock musicians.
Oh
I'd go as
yeah,
far as saying heavy metal. The raw energy in his piano-based singer-songwriter thing, you've got to look at people like Elton John, Billy Joel, Little Richard,
yeah,
just, sitting
yeah,
down at a piano and playing your music the way you
yeah.
want, not sort of just standing at a microphone covering a song. You're in charge of making the music as well, which I thought was important.
Is it, I think maybe what it does is as close to heavy rock as it can possibly be,
For the time.
having
Yeah.
the piano as the main instrument. I'd
Oh, I
say.
see. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
You can make heavy rock with guitars, but having the piano as the leading instrument is really difficult.
Yeah. Anyway, anything else to say? Should we wrap it up?
I just listen to Jerry Lewis.
We're
We
just
always
gonna.
hear like
I'm just gonna
preaching. You
stamp
got to go
that.
and listen to
I'm
it.
just gonna stamp that on
Yeah.
Felipe's screen every time when I say anything.
I'm
Say Felipe, just listen to it.
just listen.
That's like the Nike
I'll,
thing. Just do it. Just listen
yeah,
to
just
it.
do it. Just do it. Just listen. Listen to rock and
One
roll.
day I will make a Nike tick with your beard on it or something, and I'll say, just listen to it.
But I'll say okay. I will say something that I've learned from Andy, my good friend Andy, who's a guitar player. Says Jerry Lewis, listen to him. Don't look him up. Don't look him up.
Yeah.
Listen to his music. It's great.
Well, yeah, thank you for joining us, guys, on another episode. We had to look him up because we had to do the research and we had to do
But
it for you
don't
guys.
do it.
Yeah,
Just
you
listen
guys,
to the
we've
music.
given you the highlights. Don't go and read anymore if you don't want to know the bad stuff. But anyway, we thank you for joining us for another episode of the Long Live Rock and Roll podcast. If you're watching us on YouTube, hit like and subscribe so you can see when our new videos come out. If you're listening to us on Apple and Spotify, do us a favor, scroll down, give us a little review, tap the 5 stars, and it's going to do the world of good for us because we go up the charts and people will see us more often. So thank you again for joining.
Thanks for being with us one more time. Keep on rocking, everyone, and don't do anything Jerry Lewis would do. Sorry, I had to end in a different way today.
You have completely thrown me off. I was not expecting that, but actually, that could not be a more perfect line to the that could not be a more perfect Felipe line to end the episode.
Yes.
Oh,
sorry.
Jesus Christ! Anyway, on that note, take care, guys, and long live rock and roll. Seriously, see you later. Long live rock and roll.
See you guys. Thank you.